Hey everyone, it's Jeff. As we continue along on our podcast, Lora and I would love to touch on some topics that are near and dear to your hearts. So if you have anything that you want to hear us talk about, if you want to get Laura's unique perspective on some of the things that you might be dealing with or some things that your loved ones might be dealing with, we would love to hear about those things. Please send us an email. mail.sowhatwhocares@gmail.com is the best way to do that. Or you can send us something on social media through our DMs or a comment or something like that. But we'd love to hear from you. It's important to us to make sure that we are touching on the things that are important to you. Please, again, reach out to us. And while you're there, subscribe, like, and comment. Okay, enjoy the episode. It appeared just after sunrise, a jagged shape breaking the horizon, white, glowing faintly in the golden sun. The traveler adjusted course and drifted closer. An iceberg. What surprised him wasn't the size, but its silence, just floating, majestic, ancient. The traveler slowed his boat, letting the current guide him near. What showed above the surface was breathtaking, sharp, crystalline, dazzling in the sun. But it was the weight beneath that held his attention. He knew what every sailor knew. What you see is never the whole thing. Most of it, massive, unmapped, lived below the waterline. He drifted even closer, feeling the cold hum in the air. The sea around the iceberg had a different kind of pull. Not dangerous exactly, but deep. The traveler leaned over the edge of his boat, peering down, trying to trace the vague shape under the waves. There was no way to know all of it, not from here, but something about seeing just the top, just enough, was enough to stir a question. What parts of me are underwater? Not in shame, not in fear, just curiosity and the quiet pull to understand what's shaping the journey beneath the surface. This is So What Who Cares with Laura McCarville and me, Jeff Kolaski. Join us as we explore practical insights for an impractical mind. Smash that like and subscribe button if you like what we're doing here, but in a not douchebag way.
Yeah, it's right. We have to say the thing. And it worked for me because now I just sent an email, right?
Yeah.
So it really sometimes
did work.
I know. I have to hear it.
You figured out the mail dot.
Yeah. So who cares at gmail.com from our own podcast.
Right.
So
which when you told me that, I was so proud. I'm like, nicely done.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well done. That's how our brain works.
Yeah.
Auditory.
But we do like feedback. Mm-hmm. It helps, especially right now because we're trying to put together some data or some ideas on things that our listeners want to hear about. And it would be helpful if people let us know what that is. I know at the beginning of the episode, you heard my lovely voice come across saying, we want to know, but we really do. So yeah, let us know. Yeah,
that's great. And it can be specific, like it doesn't have to be general. It can be like, I have this thing. What's the rapid resolution therapy lens? What's the Jungian lens that I've been trained in? How would you see it? How would we work with this? Yeah. It can be specific.
I'm excited to hear what people have to say about that. Yeah. But today, not but, and.
Yeah.
Yes, and like improv, right? Yes, and
Did you do improv? Are you an improv guy?
no, but
Okay.
I mean, I listen to enough like comedy podcasts that I know,
The yes
the
and.
yes and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Let's talk about what we wanted to talk about today, which is consciousness, unconsciousness, subconsciousness, the consciousness, the conscious, our consciousnesses, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Subconscious, unconscious. Talk to me about
Okay.
those. What's the difference? What's the
This is so great because today I was working with a client and she was talking about a friend, and the work I do is with the unconscious. So I work with that below deep. If we okay, so let me say this. What she said to her friend was, "Well, have you ever thought about what's conscious behavior and what's unconscious?" And the friend said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
mm,
And I thought, "Oh gosh. Okay, so really to a lot of people haven't even explored that so much of what we do is driven from the unconscious. So what does that mean? If we consider the mind like an ocean,
okay?
so what's
It's on
conscious?
brand.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. So what's conscious is like what's at the top, what you can see. And Jung didn't really use, he didn't like that subconscious because he felt like it was too like not deep enough.
Okay.
So it's still used, like subconscious is still used by a lot of people, but
Is it
we
used interchangeably?
then the
Yeah.
unconscious, I think most people today use it
Okay.
interchangeably, but if we think of it, if just for this, we'll look through it like this. Think of
hmm
it like this is that the conscious mind is like what we know at the top.
hmm
And then the subconscious is like right below that in the ocean waves,
Right.
right? And then that's the subconscious. The unconscious is like the deep, deep, deep ocean that we don't know anything about,
Mm,
right? The dark places.
right.
Mhm.
Okay. So unconscious,
Mhm.
could that contribute to things like gut reactions,
Mhm.
um, like dream stuff,
Oh
all of
gosh.
that?
Yes. So if we look at the mind and the conscious, that is maybe like knowing what we want to do, taking right action in our mind, right? So if we go back to the hand model of the
hmm
brain, we might even say it's like the wise mind, if
Okay.
you would. However, the unconscious, okay, now I'm going to switch symbols. I'm
Sure.
going to go more to the iceberg.
Yeah.
So if we look at what's at the top of the iceberg,
hmm
that's the conscious mind.
Okay.
What's underneath is the unconscious. And that's really what drives the majority of our behavior, reaction, and even some of these things that we call like our gut,
Okay.
right? So we have, and the gut instinct's really great. Um, okay, but there's this other thing of sometimes the data gets misread and we
Right.
call it a gut instinct. And
Right.
in the unconscious, in the deep waters, is a story, a smell, a feeling, a sense that we say, oh, that's my gut instinct. But it's not the gut, it's just maybe a misread of data.
Right.
In rapid resolution,
Buzzword would be triggers.
sure,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's a story in rapid resolution therapy where we sort of share the story of, mm, okay, e- imagine a boy is playing the trombone and there's a bus accident, and this accident's like kapoof, right? And he takes cover and it's gruesome and it's terrible, blah
hmm
blah blah. Fast forward. Every time the boy hears a trombone, he takes cover, but he doesn't remember why.
Okay.
He never made the correlation, but the mind is a meaning making machine. It makes meaning out
Right.
of things. So in the unconscious mind, the boy said trombone equals bus accident.
Right.
But you know, and I know, and he knows, who's now an adult, knows trombone doesn't make bus accidents.
hmm
But why, when I hear a trombone, do I want to take cover? And he could say, well, it's just my gut instinct. But is it the gut instinct?
No.
No,
No.
it's something that happened that left an imprint that we now are acting in accordance with.
hmm
But is that really our gut instinct? So,
So things like, I mean, you say that that's classic PTSD, right?
sure. I
In a lot
mean,
of ways, I mean, you experience a trauma and then you smell something that, whether it's a certain perfume
Mm-hmm.
or if it's smoke or something
Right.
like that, and then that brings you back to that place and you have those sort of visceral, or would it be unconscious reactions then?
Yeah, you might even have like a somatic response,
Right.
but not even aware that you're having the response
Okay.
to the imprint or
Yeah.
to the So we use a lot of like misread of data to the
Mhm.
misread of data. So if you were to imagine this chair is sand and I took my hand and I hit the sand,
Mhm.
it would leave an imprint in the sand,
Right.
right? And what we're saying in the subconscious mind is we're going to look at the imprint and not the hand, because the hand's no longer there.
Mm.
It's what was left behind and then the meaning that the mind made of it.
Okay.
Okay? So in PTSD, the event happened, but it's in the past.
Right.
But the mind is reading it as if it's still happening, as
Right.
if the hand is still there.
Right.
The hand's
Because it
no
feels the imprint still, or
it's
sees it, or whatever.
right. And we're again, it's just like, could you just try on thinking like this, that it's not the hand, it's not the thing that happened, because that's no longer happening.
Right. Okay.
It's the imprint that got left behind. So in this discovery and this place of curiosity, and yoga does this too, and looking at like in yoga we'd use the language of samskaras. It's like the ridges of the mind, right? It's the grooves of the mind,
Mm-hmm.
the things that got left behind.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we take it to mindfulness and we say, oh, I'm becoming an observer, I'm sitting with awareness. Right? So we go, okay, so here's this awareness. And is that today happening? Is this it? Or is
Mm.
there something below the water here
Right.
that's driving the bus of my behavior, action, or
Right.
responses?
A lot of what you're saying right now is that our unconscious, the things that have been left behind, the imprints that life has left,
Mm-hmm.
they are driving, or can be driving, a lot of what we do, how we behave, how we react, some of those things. Um, why is this important to understand when you're trying to heal, when you're trying to, you know, when you're working on yourself and just living life?
Um,
Why is this such an important thing to talk about right now?
well, there is a buzz in the wellness world around subconscious reprogramming is maybe how it's termed up.
Mm.
But because what we find, and Jung said it, it's something like what's left unconscious will be the drive, and we'll call it fate. He said something like this, like essentially we'll think we're making these things and we'll say, oh, it's fate, but it's not fate, it's the unconscious.
Mm.
And then part of this becoming an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're younger, these imprints happen and we have to really stay attached to like our food givers and
Yeah.
our community. But then we become adults. And if that unconscious stuff is still guiding us, then we'll have a very unlived life.
Yeah.
So then we'll say, well, I'm doing this thing, call it chose this job, picked this partner,
Having this
living in
belief.
this
Yeah.
town, because of what was imprinted on me in the way of community or family or culture
Right.
or country.
What should be important, what,
Right.
yeah.
And it's not the authentic.
Mm-hmm.
In yoga, we call it Atman. We use the word essence here.
Mhm.
It's not like the true self
Right.
and what is meant to come through, which is really what happens. Not That's not something that I would present with young kiddos I work with.
Right.
Like that's not yet developmentally
Mhm.
appropriate. But later in life we do start asking, well, what is it? What is this? Right?
Mhm.
When we start untying those apron
Right.
strings.
So then what are some ways that we could know that we're being driven by that? Because, and I guess the reason I bring that up is there's a lot of things, and I'm right there with you. I've spent a lot of my adult life, trying to figure out what what is Jeff? What's important to Jeff? What are my values? We talked about that a few episodes ago. Sort of disconnect a little bit and try to figure out what's coming from me and my actual beliefs and my actual thought of the world, and what's still hanging on from whether it's my parents or the community I grew up in, or a big one would be religion. Like how does that all tie in? What do I believe that God is? What do I, that sort of thing. What kind of things would you coach people as you're looking at yourself? I mean, is it everything? Do you just challenge everything? Is that
I mean, that would be a little overwhelming, everything. But I think that, in all of the podcasts that we've shared, we've been talking about this place of curiosity or observer. And a really great thing that can happen in meditation or in mindfulness is we start to notice our patterns. So patterns can often point to some subconscious stuff or unconscious stuff, right? So that's a great way to do it. Now, if we go into therapy and let's say it's cognitive behavior therapy, well, then we're not really typically, there's not that curiosity as to what's the thing underneath the thing. So although that kind of behavior therapy, like that's a good one. I'm not saying not to do that, but I'm saying you might need to engage in a practice of observation, going into work with people or finding someone that works with that part of the thinking or the mind. Yoga nidra, hypnotherapy, what we'd call like bottom up therapy. So working with the deep oceans content and up. A really nice, a real obvious way is if you feel like that itchy, unsettled, it doesn't quite feel right. That's a pretty obvious way that it's kind of making itself known.
Would it be unfair to say something like, if you're getting a response from yourself, if you are giving a response, I should say, that gives you some sort of almost immediate defensiveness? And again, let me back up a little bit and give some context to that. The things in my life that I once would have gotten defensive about and almost blindly adhered to, it's like that defensiveness let me know that this is something that is maybe not coming from adult Jeff's.
Yes. That's a great ding, 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 ding. Yeah. What else is here?
Right. Maybe I need to look into this more, understand this a little better, because if this is something that I truly should be or could be this passionate about, or that I'm going to get actually upset or try to defend, I probably need to know for sure what and then going into that with some
So defensiveness, chronic guilt, people pleasing, some of these behaviors that we go, oh wow, it's those are symptoms of something else is here.
Right.
And people go their whole lives not looking at that, and that's fine. And there's this like meaning of life, and it's not like an attainment. Like I want to always be happy. It's more like what matters to me, the me here. And
what are those values that I'm striving so deeply, I guess, to stay consistent with?
Right. And then can I also hold it in knowing I'm evolving? Because someone, I just love the people I work with so much, but he said this, it was a science conversation, and I'm going to really butcher it. I wrote it down because I was like, no, this is so good. I'm writing this down. And now I'm not going to be able to say it the way he said, but it was essentially like a system could never know itself, because once the system knows itself, it's changed in the getting to know itself. It's a different system. So isn't that cool? Like this like curiosity, like for my whole life, I'll stay curious about this, not because I need to attain a perfection like state,
Right.
but because as I get to know myself, I've become something else.
That's huge. That's
It's like the
everything.
coolest.
Yeah, because to put this into my own life, the moment I become so convinced of something or convinced of who I am or what I am, that's the moment that I should, or that I would like to challenge it and make sure that maintains that, and know that it's okay if that evolves and
It will.
changes. Yeah.
I mean, it will.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that is the thing. We'll keep evolving.
Should.
Sometimes by force, sometimes we have to because we're forced into the scenario in which the universe kind of collides and we go, shit, I got to figure this out.
Right.
You know, I can give lots of, okay, so we have, I think I'm hearing, like, I think there's another great example of this. That I have personally is, and this is something where we have we have our personal unconsciousness, then we have like generational unconsciousness, these things that get passed down without being told they're passed down. So years after my divorce, I was working with like, why can't I be okay with like being happy or finding a place of like it's okay that I'm divorced. It's okay. I'm happy. And the first person I worked with, gosh, it was, 25 years ago, and exploring unconscious material. I was meeting with her. So this wasn't that long ago, 13 years ago.
Okay.
So time had passed and we're working with it, and and she does more somatics with it as I do. I could feel something, and then she guided me through it. And it was like this thing happened where I remembered my great grandma was divorced and she was very unhappy. Um, very, very unhappy. And like downturned Polish woman, never saw her smile. Her husband, my great grandfather, had remarried. And I thought, oh, and then it was like this. And I saw my mom post divorce. And she too, not today, she has a great bubble of joy about her. But there was this like survival, not be happy. And I wasn't conscious of that lineage of unhappiness post-divorce.
Right.
That my unconscious deep waters was, now you suffer.
Yeah.
Now
This
you're unhappy.
happens, and the imprint left in the sand is an unhappy person.
Yes, and I'm sure my mom inherited it from her grandmother as I did from my great grandma. No, and my great grandmother did suffer. It was a different time, but I didn't have to carry that unconscious, but I was behaving in a way according to that truth.
So then how do you, we kind of already talked about this, but how do you access that? I mean, what is it? Is it just because you're feeling, not trying to belittle it, but is it because you're feeling some sort of discontent or disconnect that you start challenging?
Well, because I was in a place of stuckness, I seeked out someone.
Right.
And I seeked out someone who works with the unconscious liminal spaces.
You were conscious enough to know that was a thing.
Right.
To dig into, which is why we're bringing it to all of you, so that
you know
and to call Lora.
And so so that is, and then you learn, as we did, and as I shared in mindfulness, that like things get filed together. So if we're in the practice of mindfulness, and if I handed you a rose and a tulip, the brain would be flower and then put it in that flower file, right? So when we're sitting in meditation, when we're practicing mindfulness, very quickly we start to see of like, oh, there's a pattern here. Flower, 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 flower. Oh, flower. Oh, whoa, this flower isn't even from me, right? So we can sometimes get there on our own in these practices. And sometimes in meditation, sometimes with mindfulness, but typically It is, or sitting with curious friends.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
This concludes part 1 of our 2-part episode on consciousness and unconsciousness. Join us next week as we continue to explore what lies beneath the surface of our own consciousness and how it shows up in everyday life. Thanks for listening to So What, Who Cares? We will be back soon.